So we'll get onto The Voice because this recent polling data that. So basically, what this is, because often you hear, oh, there's been a poll and the poll said this and the poll said that, and they fluctuate a lot. And obviously, there's a lot of different companies that do polling and they don't all sample the data in the same way. So what these guys did, these researchers, was they basically analyzed all the polls and took an overall average to show the overall trend in the data. And one of the guys who participated in the study is here in this little video, and he kind of explains it. So I'll just play this for you guys.
When it comes to general elections, they're a pretty good guide, with one notable exception, that being the 2019 election. And these are all of the national polls that we have been tracking. The yes vote, sitting at 46% in the most recent Resolve poll. But, earlier in the year, we were seeing much higher numbers. Now, each of these polls individually has a margin of error, has some random variation. The best thing that we can do really is to consider all of them at once. And we get a lot more information by combining these into a single polling average. And when we do that, let me show you what we get. I mean, the trend line is not really of great surprise. We've seen declining support for yes and increasing support for no through the year. And our best estimate is the polls collectively saying that nationally, yes is sitting on about 45.3%, according to the poll. So that is, to be clear, about a 9 or more than a 9 percentage point gap between yes and no at this stage. And if the referendum were held today, the polls would have to be out by significantly more than we saw in the 2019 federal election for yes to come out ahead. So I think it's pretty clear, and I think even the Yes campaign would acknowledge this, they are starting this final sprint to the finish on the back foot.
Anyway, so to kind of translate that, basically, over the past 6 months, there's been about a 15% drop in the yes vote and a corresponding 15% increase in the no vote, to the point now where there's a 9 percentage point on average gap in all the recent pollings. That's how far ahead no is from yes. And that's, they say the margin of error they estimate is about 2.9 to 3%. So it's like triple the margin of error in the data. And the referendum has been announced. It's going to be in 6 weeks. It's simply impossible to see a trend like that turned around. I just don't. There's nothing new that the campaign can say.
Oh, they'll try handicapping the no side. Right,
the only way in which yes wins is if they rig the vote. That's the only way in which they could win. They can't win. When you see a trend like that, you can't. There's simply no way they can win through just like flipping people back through having a few good ads or something.
Every possible method through which they can manipulate, skewer, and just fake this vote. What's the right way to put it? To just skewer the vote in the favor of yes. They're thinking of it right now. Believe me, they're going to try to get a yes result, and they're going to do everything they can to try to get a yes result.
Yeah, but they're morons. They've been so bad at conducting this campaign up to this point, so they don't have any ideas. They're going to literally just have to rig the election, and if they don't have the balls to rig it blatantly in front of the Australian people, then they're going to lose.
Lock everyone down again and say you're not allowed to go to work until you vote yes. Same with the vaccine result. People will probably do it. They'll be thinking of anything, believe me. It'd be crazy, because you said this is like 10 years in the making, this particular referendum. This isn't something they just came up with in the past 6 months. This is something that's obscure and that's been in the works for quite a while.
Yeah, but I mean, did you see the stream I did with Tom on this channel 2 nights ago? We discussed this, like a company that was co-founded literally by the CIA, who is a US intelligence contractor who did a research paper using kind of PSYOP classification manuals that must be from some intelligence agency's PSYOP protocols or whatever. Apparently the world's premier threat analysis firm. And we read through their report, and their report was written like by someone who doesn't really understand even what they were talking about. They were making all these incoherent points. It was really bad analysis. And like, this is a company that's probably worth about $1 billion. It was probably contracted by ASIO or some ASIO front company to do the research. Like, our enemies are just simply not that smart. The regime is not run by people that are that smart. They don't really know what they're doing. The No campaign has had basically no money. It's been almost entirely grassroots. Yes, okay, there's been a couple organizations that have thrown some cash in, and the Liberals flipped to support the No in a half-assed way. But overall, the main reason why these polls have flipped is just because of, I think, average grassroots Australian political activity. And we can see this on a platform like Twitter, which isn't that moderated at this point. The pro-no side completely dominate the yes side on that website. I mean, you go somewhere like Facebook, and there's been revelations that Facebook has been basically manipulated, obviously, to support yes campaign narratives, and they're shutting down and so-called fact-checking pro-no journalism and this kind of thing, and trying to like basically censor the conversation to manipulate public discourse. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't work. So I think they just got gamed here. That we analyzed it on the show many times. Their campaign has been incoherent, in my opinion. They had to backtrack on so many things and try and gaslight the Australian people as to what it's about. Basically, what they're going with now is, oh, the voice, it won't have any powers. It won't be able to do anything. It'll be totally powerless, and there's nothing to worry about. But also, we need to vote for it because without this, it's going to be horrible. And the poor Aboriginals. It's like we kind of have it both ways. Like either it's useless, we don't need it because it doesn't have any power, so it's not actually going to make a big difference, or it is going to make a big difference. In which case, you're just lying to us about how much power it's going to have. You know what I mean? So it's totally ridiculous.
The pandemic vaccine campaign was also incoherent, full of half-truths. There was a lot of backtracking there, and they still got what they wanted. So why won't they get what they want this time? Because this time people actually get to vote on it. That's what makes them nervous, I suppose. For the people who want to push through the yes vote, I suppose it's really disappointing to them that they have to actually give the people a choice. They don't want the people to have a choice. They just want to push this through regardless of what the people think. That's the truth about these, yes to the Aboriginal voice referendum campaigners. They don't give a fuck what you think. They want to force this on you regardless of what you think. That's why when I'm walking down the street and I'm seeing people's houses, regular working class people with placards on the lawn saying vote yes, I'm thinking, you fucking idiot. What do you even know about the referendum? What have you read about the referendum? Nothing. You just think, this is good for Aboriginal people. I'm a nice person because I'm saying vote yes. And that's as far as their thought process goes, these people that support the yes vote, working class people. You're just a fool. You're a fool if you go yes without thinking on this one. You're better off saying no because you just don't know anything about it. And, it's so obscure. There isn't anything to really understand about it other than nothing that this government is forcing on you or is trying to tell you you're a bad person if you don't support is beneficial to you in any way whatsoever. Like I said on the last stream we did, I said, if major media bureaucrats and major political bureaucrats are trying to shill something to you and they're trying to make you think you're a bad person if you don't support something, you should not support it because it's not in your interests every time. Whatever that TV is telling you to do the opposite. General rule of thumb.
Yeah, but I remember when they were rolling out the vaccine at first, they were struggling to get people to actually take it. Like, yeah, the lefties, like the same 40% of morons that are staunch for the yes vote or whatever in this referendum are the ones that would have gone out and got jabbed before the mandates. But the majority of Australians needed to be coerced, where they had to basically threaten people and say, you're not going to be able to have a job, you're not going to be able to go to the pub, you're not going to be able to function in everyday society unless you take this. And that was how they were able to kind of force it upon people. Whereas there's no mechanism to force this upon people other than literally just rigging the vote. So I think it's positive. I think it's positive they did this. They're just exposing themselves. They've radicalized a portion of the Australian people on a racialized issue. So overall, I think no matter what happens from here on in, the regime has taken an L. It just depends what kind of L do they want to take. Do they want to delegitimize themselves by losing, or do they want to delegitimize themselves by rigging?
I think as long as they get a result they want, they just don't care. But, thank God I was a political dissident before all that pandemic nonsense. We won't go on about pandemic for too long. It's just a stale topic, but I already had lost jobs because of who I was. I'd lost banking rights with certain banks because of, things I'd voiced and opinions I had, which I didn't think were that extreme, in the sense that I never encouraged any violence or supported any violence against anybody. I only criticized major government policy and did so rather eloquently, I suppose. So, I already experienced what it's like to sort of like not be able to work, not be able to bank, not being able to fully support myself sometimes, sleeping in my car sometimes. That all came along with being a political dissident. So then when they said, oh, you're not going to be able to work and support yourself unless you get that vaccine, I was just laughing. I'm like, I already can't. So what fucking incentive do I have?
Yeah, I think another good aspect to this because I've seen a lot of the conservative media anti-voice talking points that have been effective when I've looked at the studies on, what is the algorithm rewarding, like what videos are going viral and what isn't. The basic stuff about how, it's going to divide us by race or whatever doesn't seem to be landing. But what does seem to be landing is the stories about how we covered them on the show about how, they're going to accept votes as no if you cross it, but they won't accept it if you tick it. Or the Uluru Statement from the Heart is actually 26 pages, not one page, and Albanese's lying to you. Or this kind of recent story here about how Facebook has been manipulating the discourse and censoring like literal Sky News journalists reporting factual statements because of how compromised their moderation team is. And it's like, this is all the stuff that is really resonating with the people is not so much even the issue, but the way that the state, the way that the elites are going about trying to impose their agenda upon us. And I think that's good because, as I said, it's cultivating this kind of populist polarization, this kind of anti-system radicalism, this kind of contest where it's not even about the ideas themselves ideologically, it's more about the kind of us versus them mentality. And you were saying before, a lot of the problem with people who vote yes is that they have this kind of emotional, I'm a good person if I support this. And, if we really break it down through reasonable arguments about, what's actually rationally in the interest of the country, it's obvious that this is bad for the country. But the majority of people don't operate in the realm of reason. They operate in the realm of emotion. And this kind of, the system is forcing its agenda upon you, don't trust them, don't comply. This is a good emotional stance, I think, for a lot of people to get into that prepares them to start radicalizing into a more kind of dissenting opinion on other issues, because it kind of puts them into this kind of mental opposition against, the status quo. But I'll play this video from Sky News when I'll get your thoughts on it.
The tech giant Meta has suspended RMIT as a fact checker on Facebook. Sky News digital editor Jack Hoyton joins us live from Sydney with the breaking news. Jack, tell us what's behind Meta's decision.
Well, this is really interesting and a massive development because, as you would know, Sky News Australia has been targeted several times by a university-run operation called RMIT Fact Lab. It's highly partisan. They've been targeting views which are against the so-called voice referendum narrative, and we uncovered in an investigation that Meta has been paying them up to $740,000.
Oh wow! Did it just like freeze up?
Yeah.
Sky News. That's their website's fault. My internet's fine.
Yeah. Well.
Here we go. It's
the tech giant Meta suspended RMIT.
Uncovered in an investigation that Meta has been paying them up to $740,000 a year to do this. Now, they've come under fire based on what we uncovered in the investigation for being partisan, not following the rules of impartiality. And one of their fact checkers even tweeted out that Peter Dutton was a fear-mongering racist. So that's the level of impartiality that you expect from them. We now have confirmation that Meta has suspended them. They've removed them from the global fact-checking operation, which means they will no longer have the power to influence the debate this referendum.
Okay, so what's a reaction have we seen from RMIT to the news?
Oh, whatever. These people are boring. Anyway, the point is, it's interesting that even like mainstream conservative journalists are getting shafted by by Facebook and censored by Facebook. They're not just censoring people like us; they're even censoring like literal mainstream journalists. And I think one of the things that they censored was, I think her name is Peter Credlin or something. Everyone, all the government was trying to come up with this line that the Uluru Statement from the Heart is only 1 page, and the No campaign is lying to you that it's 26 pages or whatever, which was a total lie. And then she did a Freedom of Information request, and it turns out it actually is 26 pages. The reason why they don't want to admit that is because it's full of all this stuff about reparations and Aboriginal sovereignty and so on that demonstrates, what ultimately the goals of the Voice are. So again, more of this kind of lying and gaslighting from the system. And then they tried to kind of fact check that article, even though it was based in like literal government documents. So it's interesting to see this is how far that they're willing to go. They're willing to really kind of expose themselves. They've got the disinformation, misinformation bill that we covered that they're trying to bring out to, censor the entire internet. They're hiring these foreign intelligence contractors to analyze the malign narratives that we're promoting and so on. The total narrative collapse of the elite is something quite to behold, and the fact that their tactics have become so blatant and so sloppy that it's only making it worse for them, I find very interesting.
RMIT is a university, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I think to understand why a university fact checker employed and paid by Meta or Facebook would be so relentlessly promoting the Yes campaign for the Aboriginal voice referendum and censoring or labeling as untrue anyone on the no side. I recently enrolled in some education because I've never done any higher education before. I left school at 14 years old and began a carpentry apprenticeship with my father's youngest brother. And I haven't been in any sort of education